looking into the Saturday passage, the 20th, which also is Romans chapter 8, verse 12 to 17. I'm going to share kind of two personal stories about my dad today, one now and then one a little bit later. But majority of you, most of you guys probably know this, but I never had a really good relationship with my dad. Perhaps I never actually, I don't think I ever did. And he passed away about 4 years ago. No, actually about 5 years ago. And then, we never had a chance to, talk out, or we never had a chance to reconcile, or we never had a chance to talk it over. So my hope is that one day when I get to heaven, that when I see him there, then hopefully we can reconcile there. That's my hope. But I never had a really close relationship with my dad, but I do remember there's certain memories that my dad did that kind of stays with me. And one of them was, one of my favorite seasons growing up was actually Christmas. And the reason is because our family, we stopped now, but our family used to have a big Christmas tree in our living room. And what we would do is we would get all these presents, all these gifts wrapped up the day before Christmas, and we'll put it under the tree, right? So we'll come back from church on the 24th after Christmas Eve service. We'll go to sleep, and then I just feel this excitement. So I just could not go to sleep, right? Because I'm like, oh, what's gonna be there? And I had this excitement, right? So the morning of Christmas comes, and we'll open up the present. And sometimes when my uncles or when my grandparents are over, they will get me the gifts that I really want, right? But there's something that my dad did that was really interesting. Was as I was opening up all these gifts, right? I'm like my heart is just overjoyed, right? Because I'm like, oh man, this is what I really wanted, right? But my dad, he did something that really kind of makes me remember still is he used to hide one of the best gift in the closet, right? So maybe it was a game system or one of the biggest gift that I really wanted. And as I'm opening it, I'm so happy because it's also things that I wanted, right? But he saved the best for the last. Okay, so just when I thought that my day was going to be great and it's perfect, he would kind of pause everything and he would take this gift out of the closet, right? And then he'll kind of give it to me, right? And I still remember just oh, I could die now and just go to heaven, right? I had that kind of excitement. The reason why I'm sharing that was because yesterday, as I was reflecting this QT, Paul is giving this punchline for the believers, I think, right? And because just the fact that we've been redeemed by the blood of Jesus and crossed over from death to life, the fact that for eternity we're secure, for eternity we're going to live. We thought that that's good enough, right? That itself is worthy of God to be worshipped, right? But then he goes even further than that, right? In verse 17, he says, not only we've been delivered, but we are children. But not only children, but the heir, right? And then we will suffer with Christ at the same time. We will share in his glory. And it kind of came off like that for me. It's can this get any good, right? Can this get any better? And Paul is just giving this punchline after punchline, saying that, hey, it gets better. The story gets better, right? He actually adopts us. We'll never be an orphan. We'll never be alone. He actually adopts us, and we get to call him our Father, right? So as I was reading this, it kind of reminded me of that time. It's that excitement, right? When I first received the gospel, it's oh man, I no longer have to live with fear. I'm no longer a sinner. But at the same time, God is giving me something more, right? So that's what I felt like this passage was kind of giving it to us, right? But before we kind of jump in depth, I just want to begin by saying this, is that the verse 12 starts with this word, therefore, right? And it's like a continuation from the yesterday's passage. So for the EM and the youth crowd, let me just quickly summarize this, and then I don't have that many points to give out anyway, so I'll take some time here, and then we can kind of go into this. So here's a little bit of background about Romans, and I covered this 2 weeks ago when I spoke, but ever since Adam and Eve, okay, this is Paul's argument here, okay? This is what Paul is presenting here, okay? Ever since Adam and Eve, so just let's kind of use our imagination. So here is like darkness, death, sin, brokenness, ungodliness, everything, right? And then let's say here is God, the redemption, the blood of Jesus, heaven, everything good, right? Okay. This is what Paul is actually building his case is ever since Adam and Eve, okay, we are locked down on this side, okay? Some call it the doctrine of original sin, okay? Ever since the Adam and Eve, okay, we don't start here, we start here, okay? Everybody is dead to sin, okay? Because we inherit the sin from Adam and Eve, right? That's where, he talks about, it doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile, we're all start here at this point. We're all dead to sin. We're so incapable, we're so corrupt in our sin that we cannot save ourselves. That we're so corrupted, our hearts are so corrupted with sin that we cannot go to God, right? So everybody starts here, okay? Now, here's an interesting case that Paul makes is when we are born again, okay? I think a lot of us, sometimes we have this misunderstanding sometimes is when we are born again, we don't go here, right? Where God doesn't raise us up. The moment that we receive the gospel and then when the Spirit of God comes, we don't go here where we now get to decide, okay, we're going to live for God or we're not going to live for God or like we're going to choose God or not choose God. That's not what Paul is saying. That's not a new birth. That's not what being born again is. Being born again is you're locked down here and then you cross over to life, right? That's what being born again is. Right? So you don't go to the middle and then you're like, okay, now I get to decide whether I want to live for God or I don't live for God. And in a lot of cases, what Paul is saying is nobody lives in the middle. You're either in the darkness or you're either in the light. Nobody lives in the middle. Okay? That's how far Paul will take on this, right? And he's basically saying that the new birth and the salvation, what it does is it makes us cross from darkness to life. Right? So literally we cross over. There's a radical change where we cross over from death to life, where we become the children of God instead of the sin to the slave, right? The slave to sin. We literally cross over to life, right? That's Paul's argument here, okay? And the reason why this is important is because the way that the Paul starts this is therefore, right? Since we all experience this, since we're the people, who experience the salvation, since we've been, alive, we've been redeemed and we've been crossed over from dark to light. Therefore, right? That's how it kind of starts this verse, right? Therefore, brothers and sisters, we have an obligation, but it is not to the flesh, but to live according to it. Right? So he's saying that as a people of God who crossed over, as the people of God who tasted, as the people of God who've been redeemed and who seen God's goodness, this is how you ought to live. Right? That's Paul's argument here. Okay? And what he's saying is by the Spirit, since there's a Spirit of God that lives inside of you, okay? There might be a war of flesh, but no longer, right? You're obligated to obey your flesh. Because the Spirit of God living inside of you now gives you your life to be able to obey God, right? So this idea, right? It's like Paul is saying there's two things that radically changed about us when you go from death to life is our identity changes, right? That's what Paul is saying, right? Our identity changes. As a slave to sin, now you're children of God. From dark to light. Right? And then our relationship with God changes as well. Right? So these two things are Paul is saying, you've been radically changed and transformed and crossed over. So live like that kind of type of people. Right? Live as if you're free. Live as if you've been purchased by the blood of God, blood of Jesus, right? He's encouraging and he's charging his believers to do that. Okay? So once again, right, those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. So live as a children of God, all right? Another thing that I do just want to highlight is if you look at verse 15, it says, the spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear. Again, rather, the spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship, and by him we cry, Abba, Father. Right? So once again, let me just share one personal story as I was kind of reflecting this is, as I look back to my relationship with my dad, and one of the hardest concept that I was struggling with is the fact that God is my father. And the reason is because I had such a bad relationship with my earthly father. Every time I think of the father figure, I always kind of had this negative connotation about the father, right? And one of the things that I clearly remember is I think all the way up to college, I'm not sure if I ever did things because I loved my dad. I think I always did something because I was scared of my dad. And what I mean by that is fear was the motivator, not love, right? So I never felt like, if I mess up or if I'm not performing well or if I'm not doing certain things right, I always had this fear in me where my dad is going to be disappointed in me. Right? Or he's going to be angry at me, or he's going to lash out on me. I kind of constantly live in this fear. And I think and this is not to dishonor my dad, but I think it's because when I looked at my dad, I never felt like he really loved me for who I am. I always fell short. And I always felt like I never measure up. Right? What Paul is saying is completely different here. Okay, where does fear come from? It comes from punishment. It talks about 1 John, right? Fear has to do with punishment, right? But no longer we have a spirit of fear, but what? We have a spirit of sonship, right? And what Paul is charging is we no longer obey and serve God out of fear, all right? We serve because we're his children. We serve. Our motivation changes how we obey, right? It's no longer driven by fear. It's no longer driven by insecurity, but it is firm fixed, right, by the blood of Jesus Christ, right? And I just want to share one thing. I think a lot of my healing came from when I noticed that our God is a good father, right? And as I start to reflecting that, I start to let go, right? Because all the way up to college, when I noticed, this is kind of what happened in my heart, is when I noticed that when I felt like my dad didn't really like approve me, or like when I felt like my dad didn't really saw me as good enough, like I got super angry. So all the way up to there were times in my life where in college I got super angry at my dad, right? Super bitter at my dad, right? But what Paul is saying is we don't live that way as a children of God, right? We don't have that kind of relationship with our Father. He's a good Father, right? No longer we're under the fear. We're no longer under that, right? There's love that motivates us, right? And so just the last more point that I just want to make is, and I think this is something that as we reflect, that kind of makes my heart burst is, now if you're children, right? Verse 17, we're heirs of God, co-heirs with Christ, and if indeed we share in his suffering in order that we may also share in his glory, right? And this is amazing news for the believers, right? So how did Christ suffer, right? By dying on the cross, by carrying the cross each day, right? And we're invited to do that, right? But then there's a glory that is waiting for us, right? For us, every time I think about what does it mean to share in the glory, right? What does it mean to just kind of arrive, right? And I think John Piper kind of talks about it in a perfect way, right? To share in his glory, to arrive, right? It means that we will be the freest, most joyous, happiest people ever alive for eternity. Because we will do exactly what we're destined to do, which is to enjoy God and to worship him and to cherish him forever, right? That's our glory. It's not this worldly luxury or riches or anything like that. Our glory is the fact that we'll finally be united with our Creator and to enjoy Him forever, for eternity, right? That's our glory as a believer, right? Let me share. Sorry, I'm sharing a lot of personal stories, but I jot down a lot of things. But when I go to mission, right? I went to 2 mission trips with Salt and Light Church, and both mission trips were amazing, right? But every time I go to mission trip, there's a thought that'll cross my head, and that is, man, I just want to live like this. Just worship with my brothers and sisters. Just serve the Lord together. Have fun. Laugh together. Like, I don't want to go back. So in Korean, it's like, 그냥 이렇게 살고 싶다, right? Because it's like we're together every morning. We don't have to worry about our daily life. We basically get up in the morning. We worship together. We serve together, and then we come together and we share together. We enjoy together, right? And I remember one of the chief sanim says, "This is like a little heaven, like a 작은 천국 for us," right? And for me, when I think about arriving in that place where we get to share the glory of God, right? It's that picture, right? And that's one of the reasons why, I love the Salt and Light Church and our family, because I get to experience that here as well, that little heaven, right? Where we get to come together as a believer and we get to experience God, worship God together, growing God together, and experience His goodness together. But considering the fact that that's there's going to be like 100 times magnified, right? It makes me want to look forward to heaven, right? So all to say, what Paul is saying is this: as a believer, right, we have so many things to look forward to and ahead, that we can leave this life behind, right? And another way that Paul kind of encourages is our momentary suffering. Our suffering is momentary, but there's a greater glory that is coming for other believers, right? So my encouragement for everyone in this room is this, okay? Those of you who are facing challenges and difficulties, right? Those who are walking through the wilderness and walking through, the valley of shadow of death, right? Let's keep our eyes focused, right, on Christ, the author and the perfecter of our faith, right? And I think that's what exactly Paul is encouraging us here. He said, guys, look, right? Not only you've been redeemed, but look, you're children. Not only that, you've been adopted as a children of God. But not only that, you guys are co-heirs. But not only that, you will share in His suffering. But that's not the end of the story. You also share in His glory, right? And I think as a believer, there's some part of us that makes us, excited, saying that, hey, this is our story. This is how the story will end for the believers here. Okay? So let's bow our heads. I want to encourage everyone to, let's fix our eyes on Jesus this morning. Let's lift up our heads, and we might have a lot of things going on in our lives, a lot of situations, or a lot of things, maybe things that we need to handle, or a lot of stressful situations and things like that. But let's lift up our eyes this morning and fix our eyes on Jesus. And let's just go before Him this morning and spend some time. Say, God, we just want to lay everything down before You, knowing that You will take care of it, knowing that it will be okay, knowing that His plan for us is perfect. But let's fix our eyes on Christ.